If you are listening to this message right now, pause for a moment and answer yourself one honest question. How many times today have you done something purely, entirely for your own deeply selfish pleasure? Not for your family, not for your partner, not to earn approval at work, and not to tick another box on your productivity list. When was the last time you allowed yourself the luxury of simply being, without that heavy, dull, sticky sense of guilt creeping in? I suspect your answer brings a quiet, slightly bitter smile. We live in a peculiar age where being convenient, self-sacrificing, and constantly busy has become a badge of honor. Look around. Modern culture has turned female exhaustion into a kind of sacred ritual. You are taught that if you are not drained by the end of the day, then you must be failing somewhere. Not devoted enough as a mother, not loving enough as a partner, not hard-working enough as an employee. For centuries, the machinery of consumption has fed us one of the most corrosive illusions imaginable. It has convinced us that love is the same thing as service. So there you stand, at the center of what appears to be a successful life. Perhaps you have a relationship, a comfortable home, a certain status. Your loved ones are cared for, your responsibilities are handled, you deliver on time, you function perfectly within the system. You are agreeable, you do not disturb anyone. You are the embodiment of social virtue. And yet, when you are alone in the quiet of your bedroom, staring at the ceiling, there is that unmistakable emptiness, a sharp, echoing void inside you. Your lower back aches, your jaw is permanently clenched, your breath is shallow, barely reaching your collarbones. You can feel it, if you are honest. That warm, instinctive, wild energy within you is slowly leaking away, drop by drop, leaving behind nothing but the grey residue of obligation. Why does this happen? Why, when you follow every rule of being the good girl, do you not receive the happiness you were promised? The answer lies in something rarely spoken about. Something carefully avoided in glossy psychology magazines and neatly packaged self-improvement books. What they do not tell you is this. The system we live in is deeply, almost instinctively afraid of a woman who has discovered the power of her own pleasure. Because a woman who is connected to her body, who allows herself to feel, to enjoy, to exist without shame, becomes impossible to control. Today, at Soft Power Society, we step into one of the most forbidden and distorted themes within our culture. We are going to speak about an archetype whose image has been rewritten for centuries, reduced to something trivial and harmless. We are going to speak about Aphrodite. Not the softened, decorative figure from modern storytelling, not the fragile beauty designed to please the eye. We are speaking about something far older, far more formidable, a sovereign principle, a law of existence itself, the law of total, restorative, instinctive self-centeredness. In this exploration, we will bring together the depth of Jungian thought with the precision of neurobiology. You will begin to understand how guilt, even at a cellular level, restricts your breath and tightens your chest. How living in a constant state of responsibility and rescue accelerates aging through elevated cortisol. How your body quite literally pays the price for your self-denial. We will also examine something that is often misunderstood: magnetism. Why powerful, high-status men are not drawn to those who strive to please them, but instead feel an almost gravitational pull towards women who are fully absorbed in their own comfort, their own experience, their own internal world. And most importantly, by the end of this, you will receive a structured 7-day somatic protocol, a method to begin rewiring your nervous system, to dissolve that rigid armor around your heart, to restore sensation, to reclaim, without apology, your right to feel pleasure. For now, settle in. Adjust the volume. Silence your notifications. Put your phone aside. Sit back and allow your shoulders to finally drop. Take a slow, deliberate breath, imagining the air filling the very center of your chest. Let yourself arrive here. Before we turn to science, we must descend into something deeper, into the foundations of the collective unconscious. Carl Jung demonstrated that myths are not simply old stories, they are psychological codes embedded within us. What we believe as a society shapes not only our thoughts, but our posture, our hormonal balance, even the way tension lives in our muscles. Think back to how we are taught about antiquity. We are told that Aphrodite is merely the goddess of beauty, a charming figure, a patron of romance and marriage, a light, decorative presence born from sea foam, existing to adorn the world and inspire men. That is the version you were given. It is not the truth. This is not a minor misunderstanding. It is a vast, deliberate distortion. What you were taught is a diluted version, carefully reshaped to strip this image of its original force. A softened narrative, adjusted to fit a system that requires compliance rather than sovereignty. When you turn to older, more authentic sources, the picture shifts entirely. The primordial form of Aphrodite, known as Aphrodite Urania or Astarte, was not a decorative figure. She was one of the most ancient and commanding archetypal forces in human consciousness, older, in mythological terms, than Zeus himself. Not merely associated with emotion, but embodying transformation through pleasure. A force that alters reality through sensation, presence, and desire. And her defining principle was uncompromising. She did not serve. Not men, not systems, not expectations. She belonged only to herself. She could have a husband, lovers, alliances, yet she never dissolved into them. She never placed another's needs above her own experience of life. She could not be shamed. She could not be made to feel guilty for existing in her fullness. She did not ask permission to radiate. She did not conceal herself to make others comfortable. Her energy was elemental, at times as overwhelming as a tidal force, at others as gentle and life-giving as spring sunlight, but always sovereign. And that is precisely why, as historical eras shifted, this archetype became intolerable. With the rise of rigid religious structures and ascetic moral systems, something had to change. Not in reality, but in narrative. Because empires do not function on sovereign, self-directed individuals. They require obedience, predictability, endurance. The system needed a different kind of woman. One who would maintain the household without compensation. One who would raise future soldiers. One who would endure discomfort without resistance. One who would prioritize duty over sensation, obligation over self. So pleasure was recast as danger. Beauty became suspicious. Attention to one's own body was reframed as vanity, even moral failure. Self-love was labelled selfishness in its most destructive form. Sensuality was pushed into the realm of something almost forbidden, something to be controlled or suppressed. A woman who laughed too freely, who invested time in herself, who expressed her attractiveness without apology, who refused to collapse under exhaustion, became a problem, a destabilizing force. Consider the era of the witch trials, often referred to as the European witch hunts. Punishment was not reserved only for herbal knowledge or folk medicine. It extended to beauty, independence, non-conformity. To women who did not fit the mold, to those who could not be contained, And this did not vanish. It embedded itself. Modern science, particularly epigenetics, demonstrates that patterns of stress and trauma can be transmitted across generations. Not metaphorically, but biologically, encoded in the way your system reacts, even when you consciously reject the belief. Look at your life now, in what is supposed to be a free and advanced world. Has the mechanism truly disappeared, or has it simply become more subtle? When you choose rest over responsibility, what happens internally? When you decide to lie in a bath for an extra hour instead of completing tasks for others, what do you feel? There is that immediate, sharp intrusion. Guilt, precise and cold. And then the internal dialogue begins. Familiar, almost inherited. You should be doing something useful. You are falling behind. Others are working harder. You have not earned this. That voice is not entirely yours. It is layered with generations of conditioning, strict authority figures, exhausted women who had no alternative, systems that rewarded sacrifice and punished self-directed pleasure. From early childhood, the message is reinforced. Your value is proportional to your usefulness. You learn to anticipate needs before they are spoken, to read emotional atmospheres, to adjust yourself in real time, to become indispensable by being constantly available. Within the framework of Carl Jung, this is the formation of the persona, the social mask, the version of you designed for acceptance and survival within a group, the agreeable one, the reliable one, the one who causes no disruption. But something else happens simultaneously. Your internal Aphrodite does not disappear. She is displaced, pushed into what Jung described as the shadow, the unexpressed, unacknowledged dimension of the psyche, the part that holds instinct, desire, vitality. You lock it away, because at some point, consciously or not, you concluded that being fully yourself carries risk. Social risk, emotional risk, existential risk. Yet suppression is never neutral. It always has a cost. When an archetypal force is denied expression psychologically, the body absorbs the pressure. At this point, mythology gives way to physiology. In somatic psychology, particularly in the work of Wilhelm Reich, there is a concept known as character armor, the understanding that unexpressed emotion does not simply disappear, but instead collects in the body, settling into the musculature and forming chronic patterns of tension. And when a body is constantly oriented around others, the impact concentrates most heavily in the thoracic segment, in the region of the chest, lungs, and diaphragm. And if you consider the biomechanics of fear, when an animal perceives a threat, it contracts. The shoulders rise, the chest tightens, in an instinctive attempt to shield the heart. And now place that same response into a psychological environment where the threat is no longer physical, but social. The fear of disapproval, the fear of being judged, the fear of not being enough. The body does not differentiate between these categories of danger and responds in exactly the same way. And over the years, this creates a posture of elevated shoulders, restricted chest muscles, and a diaphragm that gradually loses its elasticity and becomes rigid. And as a result, breathing begins to change, shifting away from deep diaphragmatic respiration into shallow upper chest breathing that is short, rapid, and incomplete, resembling the breathing pattern of an organism bracing for impact. And from this point, a physiological cascade is set into motion, because shallow breathing continuously signals to the brain that conditions are unsafe, pushing the system into a sustained survival state, prompting the adrenal glands to increase production of stress hormones, primarily cortisol and adrenaline, which in themselves are not harmful and are essential for acute responses, but when chronically elevated, begin to reshape the internal environment of the body, deprioritizing restoration, reducing collagen synthesis, lowering skin density, allowing tissue to descend under gravity, increasing inflammation, and disrupting hormonal balance. And most critically, cortisol suppresses the production of estrogen and progesterone, the very hormones associated with vitality, softness, reproductive health, and what is culturally perceived as feminine radiance, which means that the pursuit of being consistently useful and consistently ideal carries a measurable biological cost and accelerates depletion. And beyond this, there is another layer, where chronic stress alters reward pathways, particularly the functioning of dopamine. So instead of deriving satisfaction from sustained states of calm or fulfillment, the system begins to seek rapid, fragmented stimulation through scrolling, external validation, praise, and achievement loops. Small spikes that momentarily interrupt exhaustion, but do not resolve it. This is not fulfillment, but compensation. Whereas Aphrodite energy operates through an entirely different biochemical state, one defined not by urgency, but by immersion, not by restless seeking, but by receptive presence, associated with parasympathetic activation and the release of oxytocin and endorphins, neurochemistry linked to safety, trust, and embodied pleasure. Yet this chemistry cannot emerge in a system locked in control and haste, and requires a specific neurological condition, often described as ventral vagal activation, a baseline of safety within the nervous system. And from this state, behavior shifts in a way that appears subtle, but is in fact fundamental. Because a woman connected to this center does not rush, not as a performance, but as a physiological reality. She eats with attention. She moves with awareness. She experiences rather than completes. She is not optimizing time, but inhabiting it. And she does not observe herself through criticism, but through a quiet and grounded appreciation. And this leads directly into a question that unsettles many. Why relationships often follow patterns that appear irrational? Why women who are consistent, attentive, and accommodating can become invisible within their own relationships, while those who are less available and more self-directed generate stronger attraction. And this is where the phenomenon of magnetism begins to emerge, not as mysticism, but as a function of perception, attention, and nervous system dynamics. And it is precisely here that the conversation becomes uncomfortable. This is where we arrive at the central paradox of modern relationships, the phenomenon of magnetism that so many women experience yet struggle to explain. Because at some point, every woman has asked herself this same bitter and disorienting question. Why is it that the perfect, polished, endlessly accommodating wife, the one who gives everything, anticipates every need, smooths every edge, sacrifices her time, her body, her energy, why is she so often betrayed, overlooked, taken for granted? Why does she slowly become invisible inside the very life she built? And at the same time, why is it that women who unapologetically center themselves, who protect their boundaries with precision, who are unafraid of being labeled difficult or selfish, who refuse to mold themselves into something digestible, why do they draw in the most powerful, decisive, and resourceful men as if by an unseen gravitational force? Because from childhood you were taught a story, a carefully constructed narrative that men value softness in the form of compliance, that you must be agreeable, supportive, easy, that you must bend without resistance, that your role is to be pleasant and accommodating. But this narrative collapses under scrutiny, because a man who is psychologically and biologically developed, particularly one who operates in high-stakes environments, who competes daily for power, status, and resources, is not searching for comfort in the simplistic sense. Comfort can be purchased, care can be outsourced, functionality can be hired. But what cannot be bought is a state, a feeling, a shift in his internal chemistry. And this is where the deeper mechanism reveals itself. The human brain is wired with mirror systems that constantly scan and interpret the emotional and physiological states of others within milliseconds. When a woman enters a space carrying anxiety, carrying the subtle tremor of needing approval, her body transmits that signal with ruthless clarity. Her posture, her breathing, the micro-expressions in her face, even the biochemical markers of stress, all communicate a single message beneath words: that she is seeking validation, that she is negotiating for acceptance, that she is prepared to give more than she receives in order to secure attachment. And this signal, though it may evoke sympathy, does not evoke desire. It does not ignite pursuit. It does not create that visceral pull that overrides logic, because there is nothing to move towards, only something asking to be filled. And a man may protect that, he may contain it, he may even possess it, but he will not burn for it. He will not feel compelled to invest his full force into it. Whereas when a woman enters a space fully anchored in herself, unhurried, uncompressed, internally resourced, something shifts that cannot be faked. Her body is open, her breathing is deep and unforced, her movements are uncalculated. She is not performing for approval, nor scanning for reaction. She is immersed in her own experience. And this creates a radically different signal, one that communicates sufficiency rather than lack, one that suggests depth rather than need. And the nervous systems around her respond accordingly. Because presence at that level is rare, it is disarming. It interrupts the habitual patterns of tension and striving that dominate most environments. And for a man who spends his life navigating pressure, competition, and constant demand, encountering that kind of embodied calm creates an immediate physiological response. His system begins to downregulate, the internal noise quiets, the armor softens, and in that moment he is not analyzing. He is responding at a level beneath cognition, where attraction is not a choice but a reaction, where he feels drawn not to what she does, but to what he experiences in her presence. And this is where the misunderstanding often becomes painful, because what appears as selfishness on the surface is in fact coherence. It is alignment between internal state and external expression. It is a refusal to abandon oneself for the sake of acceptance, and that coherence generates value in a way that effort alone cannot. Because effort driven by fear contracts, while presence grounded in self-connection expands. And expansion is what draws attention, holds it, and sustains it, which leads to an uncomfortable but necessary realization that attraction at its core is not a reward for sacrifice, but a response to vitality. And vitality cannot coexist with chronic self-denial. Which brings us to the final question. How does one move from the conditioned state of tension, approval-seeking, and self-abandonment into this embodied sovereignty? How do you dismantle the physical rigidity that has been built over years within the chest, the breath, the nervous system itself? Because this is not a cognitive shift. It cannot be negotiated through logic or reframed through positive thinking. The body does not respond to concepts. It responds to experience, to repetition, to signals of safety that are felt rather than understood. And until the body is given that safety in a tangible way, it will continue to default to the patterns it knows, no matter how clearly the mind sees the alternative. I invite you to the 7 Days of Aphrodite Challenge. These 7 days are devoted to one thing. The body understands only physical action and safety. This is somatic protocol for your rebirth of Aphrodite. These 7 days are devoted to one thing. A precise and uncompromising sabotage of your inner good girl and the restoration of your sacred self-centeredness. Days 1 and 2. The return of breath and the release of the chest. In these 2 days, you will relearn how to breathe. Your task is to break the habit of pulling in your stomach and holding your breath when you feel anxious. Lie on your back. Place one palm in the center of your chest and the other low on your abdomen. Inhale slowly to a count of 4, directing the air only into your belly so that the lower hand rises like a dome while the upper hand remains completely still. This is the diaphragmatic breathing of infants and predators. Then exhale slowly, lazily, through a slightly open mouth with a soft, audible sound. On the exhale, imagine a thick metal band around your ribs snapping open and falling away. Breathe like this for 10 minutes before sleep. The vibration of your voice stimulates the vagus nerve and signals your system to release tension. You will feel your jaw soften and drop. That is normal. The mask is leaving your face. Days 3 and 4. Reclaiming your body through touch. Many women do not feel their bodies. The body becomes only a vehicle for the mind and a tool for productivity. This changes now. In these days, your task is to slow down any contact with yourself. When you apply cream after a shower, do not do it mechanically. Do not rush. Move slowly. Touch your shoulders, your hips, your stomach with awareness. Look at your body not as a judge, but as an artist in love with form. Train your nervous system to register pleasure from touch. Build somatic awareness. Speak to yourself out loud. My body is my sacred space. I am allowed to be soft. It is safe for me to feel pleasure. Days 5 and 6. The protocol of boundaries. The power of no. Aphrodite does not tolerate discomfort for the sake of approval. In these 2 days, you declare a refusal of automatic compliance. Your task is to find at least 3 moments each day where you would usually say yes to avoid conflict, and instead say a calm, firm, unapologetic no. A colleague asks you to finish their work. No. A friend calls to unload emotional weight when you are exhausted. No. Your children demand immediate attention when you are finally resting. You say, no, I will be available in 15 minutes. When you say this word, feel the surge of energy in your chest. Self-centeredness is not cruelty. It is a filter that protects your energy for what truly matters to you. Day 7. Integration and embodiment. On the final day, you take this state into the world. Dress in a way that reflects how you feel, not what is expected. If you want elegance in the daytime, wear it. Walk slowly. Refuse to rush. Let the world move in its constant urgency. You move with presence. Your posture is open. Your body is no longer armored. You move from your center. Feel the sunlight. Notice how people respond when you allow yourself this calm authority. Accept attention without shrinking. You no longer need to justify yourself. You do not need to apologize for existing. You are not here to be modest. You are here to be alive. The return of Aphrodite is not a temporary technique. It is a complete shift in your internal system. For years, you were taught to earn love through effort and sacrifice. You no longer need to earn love. You no longer need to hold tension in your body to be accepted. You are not responsible for carrying the expectations of others. Your body was created for one essential experience: to feel life fully, to experience existence without contraction. Allow yourself this. Remove the mask of the good girl. Release the invisible pressure from your chest. Take a slow, deep breath. Let it drop into your abdomen. Feel the space inside your body expand again. You are safe. You are here. Your energy belongs to you. If this resonated deeply within you, follow the Soft Power Society channel. This was always yours, Katara Lilith. I thank you for being here. Looking forward to hear from you in the comments. Talk soon.